I firmly believe that everybody on this planet has a gift. It's your job to figure out what that gift is. Then it becomes your job to decide whether you're going to act on that or not. Everyone sees the work that you put in, but it's what you don't see is going to determine how far you're going to get.
Action is what builds confidence. It doesn't start with belief. The real way for most of us is not to wait to believe, but to push ourselves to act, and through the action you will build the belief.
All the time people say, oh, look in the mirror and you'll see why you're not succeeding. I don't believe that. It's what you don't see in the mirror. That's what's holding you back. It's what you're not willing to see is why talent is not enough. And when you finally see it and accept it and decide to work on it, then you can take that next level.
But if you are constantly looking outside of yourself and you don't latch on to your gift, you will never find your purpose. If you want to succeed, you must commit to your own gift and embrace it. Now, this is how you know you're not living in your gift. If when the alarm clock goes off in the morning and you ain't happy about it, you ain't doing what you want to do. See, you fighting upstream. You're going against what God created you for. If your job makes you sick to go to, if you're unhappy with waking up to go to where you got to go, it's because you ain't living in your gift. Some people are born to be teachers, caregivers, nurses, babysitters. Those are gifts. If you're living in your gift, you're cool. It's just if you ain't. If you fry chicken better than everybody else, you should be somewhere frying chicken. If you do hair better than everybody else, you should be somewhere doing somebody's hair. Those are gifts. Telling jokes was a gift. They're just not just running, jumping. If you paint, you should be painting. If babysitting is what you really do, you should be babysitting. You're doing anything. If you fix cars, you work with your hands. You're supposed to be working with your hands. You do anything else, when that alarm clock go off in the morning, you ain't gonna like it. Now, if you waking up, you going down there, they ain't paying you what you want. You hate your coworkers. You're down there, your boss has no business being your boss. I just never thought that anybody should be in charge of me. I always saw myself free. I just want to come to work. This is all I want to do. Bishop Jake said this, that I would hate to die and never do the thing I was born to do. You should look into that before you mess around and check out of here.
I think everyone can always, brush up on their technique. It is, what we do is takes a lot of research. If you really want to inhabit a role, it takes a lot of work and training, and I think it's incredibly important to constantly, no matter how successful you are, it's incredibly important.
I always believe that natural talent can take you so far, but I think you need to have the work ethic and the drive to achieve your potential. I'd say, my natural talent, probably brought me 50% of the way. But then after that, it was all down to the work that I've done and the volume of work that I've done over the last 15 years. When I really started to take golf seriously and thought about making this a career.
One thing we've failed to do in the educational system is alert people that if you're doing what no one has done before, stuff goes wrong. And in fact, if nothing ever goes wrong in what you're doing, if you make no mistakes in your job, in whatever task you've brought upon yourself, then you are not on the frontier. Simple. It's true in science, and I heard it applied to car racing. There's a quote that I'm told, spoken by Mario Andretti. He said, if you are in complete control of your car, you're not in the race.
Oh, wow.
There's something that you're just not completely in control of.
I take that.
And only then and that's the same thing I'm describing for when you are on the frontier.
We've been getting a ton of questions about being paralyzed with the fear of what other people think. And this is so commonplace. I think every human being on the planet is paralyzed in some aspect or some area of their life because they're concerned about what their parents or what their friends or what their friends on Facebook or what their colleagues or what their upline or their downline or whatever, what their neighbors are going to think. If you are struggling with this and you have not found it helpful to attack your thinking patterns, then here's a trick that I want you to try to break the pattern of being paralyzed by what other people think. I want you to pick one thing that you've been wanting to do, that you've been thinking about, but you have stopped yourself from doing because you're concerned about what other people think. Let me give you some examples. Maybe you've wanted to go on a wellness retreat, but you think your spouse will roll their eyes at you, so you haven't done it. Maybe you have a particular Facebook post or a blog. So many of you want to start a business or start creating art, but you're terrified of putting yourself out there because of what other people will think. Today, we're going to break that pattern. What you're going to do is you're going to pick one thing you've been stopping yourself from doing, and you're going to do it. You're going to do it. And the reason why I want you to do this is because I know that if you're still paralyzed, you have not been able to change your thinking patterns yet. That's cool. No problem. We're going to try a different tactic. I want you to change this paralysis through action. Because if you sign up for that class, if you go on that retreat, if you create your art, if you post that blog post, if you start that business, you will be proving to yourself through the actions that you're taking that you don't care what other people think. Try that today. Let me know, number one, what you've stopped yourself from doing, and number two, what you're committing to doing today. Because one way to break this is to attack the thoughts and change the thoughts and get into action first. The other way to do it is to recognize that you're paralyzed, pick one thing that you're going to do, and actually get it done.
Persevere. Nothing worthwhile is easy. No one of achievement has avoided failure, sometimes catastrophic failures. But they keep at it. They learn from mistakes. They don't quit. You know, when I first arrived on this campus, we had little money, fewer options. But it was here that I tried to find my place in this world. I knew I wanted to make a difference, but it was vague how, in fact, I'd go about it. But I wanted to do my part to shape a better world. So even as I worked after graduation in a few unfulfilling jobs here in New York, I will not list them all. Even as I went from motley apartment to motley apartment, I reached out and I started to write letters to community organizations all across the country. And one day, a small group of churches on the south side of Chicago answered, offering me work with people in neighborhoods hit hard by steel mills that were shutting down, and communities where jobs were dying away. The community had been plagued by gang violence, so once I arrived, one of the first things we tried to do was to mobilize a meeting with community leaders to deal with gangs. And I'd worked for weeks on this project. We invited the police, we made phone calls, we went to churches, we passed out flyers. The night of the meeting, we arranged rows and rows of chairs in anticipation of this crowd, and we waited, and we waited. And finally, a group of older folks walked into the hall, and they sat down, and this little old lady raised her hand and asked, "Is this where the bingo game is?" It was a disaster. Nobody showed up. My first big community meeting. Nobody showed up. And later, the volunteers I worked with told me, that's it, we're quitting. They'd been doing this for 2 years, even before I'd arrived. They had nothing to show for it. And I'll be honest, I felt pretty discouraged as well. I didn't know what I was doing. I thought about quitting. And as we were talking, I looked outside and I saw some young boys playing in a vacant lot across the street, and they were just throwing rocks up at a boarded building. They had nothing better to do. Late at night, just throwing rocks. I said to the volunteers, before you quit, answer one question. What will happen to those boys if you quit? Who will fight for them if we don't? Who will give them a fair shot if we leave? And one by one, the volunteers decided not to quit. We went back to those neighborhoods and we kept at it. and we registered new voters, and we set up after-school programs, and we fought for new jobs, helped people live lives with some measure of dignity, and we sustained ourselves with those small victories. We didn't set the world on fire. Some of those
responsible for your life. And if you're sitting around waiting on somebody to save you, to fix you, to even help you, you are wasting your time, because only you have the power to take responsibility to move your life forward.
Nobody is going to cry for you. They have their own tears. One thing I'm positive about is how ROI negative complaining is and how much I'm trying to suffocate the practice of it. I really have been fascinated by people that have changed their mindset into understanding that everything that is not going well right now is their fault. It has been remarkably important to me in understanding that everything that I'm not happy about is on me. It's a remarkably interesting brain twist. The amount of energy spent on things that you can't control versus being accountable to what you can control has been a huge separator for me in the last 4 or 5 years as I've dug deep.
I always tell people the most valuable lesson I got from my mentor, Jim Rohn, was I asked my father, worked 2 jobs. We were always broke. We had no money for food. And we lived in a community we moved to, which was, I thought they were all rich, and we were on the other side of the tracks. It was lower middle class, but compared to where we lived before, these people seemed rich compared to us. And I just didn't understand it. And Jim said to me, Tony, it's not about the value of your soul. It's about the value of you in the marketplace. And your father's skills are not that valuable.
Someone said we have 2 primary choices in life. We can either accept conditions as they exist, or we can take the responsibility to change them. See, a lot of people want to exempt themselves from taking responsibility. All they want to do is talk about the problem. Every time you see them, they'll tell you their story over and over and over and over again.
No one's going to do anything for you. A couple rules of being a real leader. You need to take responsibility for your own life. Bringing energy to your team, leading in recruiting, leading in leadership, leading in growth. Nobody owes you anything, but you owe other people everything. That's what a leader does. You take responsibility. You know exactly right now what you're not doing. It would be criminal of you to leave here and say, I don't know what to do. You know exactly what you're afraid of. You know exactly what you've been avoiding, and you got to make a decision to change it. You know exactly what it is. Don't BS anybody. You know what you need to do different. You know the changes you need to make. And if you can do that, you stop kidding yourself, you can win. You can overcome your fear, overcome procrastination, whatever that is.
I say to people, you got to participate in your own rescue. You've got to retool yourself. There are no skill sets in community colleges today, for the most part, that are going to prepare you for the economy or a job that's there. So what is that going to do? You're just going to waste more money, more time. We need to retool ourselves. The government's not going to do it for you.
And even when you're struggling, even when you're discouraged, and you feel like other people have given up on you, don't ever give up on yourself.
Right now, between me and the person I want to be, between you and the person you want to be, there is a gap of skill set, and that's it. But once you know your mission, and once you believe that you can accomplish anything you set your mind to, then you can do the extraordinary. Now for me, getting out of that space of being lost, of not knowing what I wanted to do with my life, it all came down to needing to earn credibility with myself in very small incremental ways. And I knew if I was going to accomplish anything in my life, I was going to have to get control of my mind. Now, ironically, there's 2 ways to get control of your mind. Way number 1 is directly going to the mind, which can be very scary, can be very daunting, very ethereal. It's ephemeral, it's hard to grab onto, it's hard to touch. But way number 2 is through the body. And so I decided that my kung fu was going to be to get very good at developing my body. And in that process, I was going to learn about nutrition, which would allow me to help my mom and my sister. In that process, I was going to earn credibility with myself. And earning credibility with yourself is so important. Do it in micro ways. For me, just showing up to the gym every day was a micro victory. I said I was going to do it, and I did it. Now, you have to understand, I hate working out. So for all of you crazy people that get an endorphin rush from running, I hate you all. Running for me is like being stuffed into a meat grinder. There is absolutely nothing pleasurable about it whatsoever. So whatever neurological thing you guys get that you've been blessed with, I have not been blessed with that. So for me, showing up at the gym sucks. Eating a bowl of ice cream is awesome. And so getting to a better place for me was a totally different journey. Thank you. And what that was just showing up every day and putting in the work. It was reading about human metabolism and understanding how what I eat impacts my body. It was earning a little bit of discipline every day, knowing that, well, I did it yesterday, I can do it again today. It was not eating something that I wanted to eat. And most importantly, and if you're taking notes, write this down, it was about changing my identity. Because at the end of the day, identity and values drive behavior. Identity and values drive behavior. So if you want to make a change, you have to change your vision of who you are. You have to begin telling yourself a different narrative. And the narrative you tell yourself about yourself is everything. And if you tell yourself that you're a scared, undereducated kid from Tacoma whose family has never accomplished anything, let me tell you what you will become. A scared, undereducated kid from Tacoma who never accomplishes anything, because that's what you believe. You tell yourself that story enough, and it will become real. But on the flip side, you could tell yourself a story of you're a learner. You learn faster than most people. You're willing to put in more work than most people. You're willing to read more books than most people. You're willing to spend an inhuman amount of time every day improving your mind simply by getting new ideas into the system. And that you will admit that you're wrong faster than anybody else. That you won't let your ego get in the way. And you tell yourself that story over and over and over. So when somebody comes and tells you how stupid you are, that you're just a dumb kid from Tacoma, you go, you're right, that's amazing. Thank you for pointing out that flaw, because now that I'm aware of it, I can improve it because I'm the learner. And once I switched my narrative to being the learner, it didn't matter where I started, it only mattered where I was trying to go. And as long as I had that clarity, then I could execute, because I believed I could do anything I set my mind to without limitation.
You don't need a better economy. You don't need better seed and soil. In fact, when it comes to seed and soil and rain and sunshine and seasons and the miracle of life, that's all you got. Now, what if you blame this stuff? Then you're blaming all you got. If you blame the economy, and you blame the schools, and you blame the teachers, and you blame the sermons and the preachers, and you blame, the marketplace, and you blame the company and company policy, what else is there? When some people get through with their blame list, there isn't nothing else. That's all there is. And if you blame the only thing you've got to work with, I'm telling you, it's called mistake colossal. In not understanding that that's all you've got to work with. And if this is all you've got to work with, then you don't change the seed, and you don't change the soil, and you don't change the rain, and you don't change the sunshine, you don't change the seasons. Right? Guy says, I'll take 3 springs, 4 summers, 9 falls, no winters. And no, you can't fool with this stuff. You got to take it like it comes. Then what do you change to make your life work well? You got to start with your philosophy. Guess what I had to do at age 25 in order to change my own future? I had to change my mind. I had to change my thinking. I had to change my philosophy. I was messed up on what was causing my problem. And once I got that straightened out, that all the stuff I blamed, the government and taxes and the marketplace and the economy and things cost too much, negative relatives, cynical neighbors, once I got rid of that and started going for where the real problem was, which was me, I'm telling you, my life exploded into change. My bank account changed immediately. My income changed immediately. My whole life took on a whole new look and color immediately. And the early results I got from making these philosophical changes tasted so good, I've never stopped the process from that day until today. And I'm telling you, with a little consideration of the refinement of your sail, by setting a better sail, refining your philosophy, your whole life can start to change from today on. You don't have to wait till tomorrow. You don't have to wait till next month. You don't have to wait till spring. Don't have to wait till 93. You can start this whole process immediately. I recommend it. Now, some people do so little thinking, they don't even have their sale up. I mean, you can imagine where they're going to wind up at the end of this week, at the end of this month, at the end of this year. Now's the chance to change, process all this information. Here's the definition of success and failure. Just make this note. Here's failure. A few errors in judgment, repeated every day. Now, you can automatically assume, Mr. Owen, I say, I can understand that. A few errors in judgment repeated every day. For 6 years, my father, 88 years old, he's never been ill, still hasn't retired. Not long ago, midnight, we're getting ready to go to bed. We've drilled a new well, got some extra water, got some more acres going, he's all excited. At midnight, we're getting ready to go to bed. My father's eating what he calls his midnight snack. A little bite to eat before you go to bed. Don't have to go to bed hungry. And I'm watching him eat this midnight snack. Guess what he had? An apple, a few graham crackers, and a glass of grapefruit juice. I said, no wonder my father's so healthy. My mom taught us all those good health practices. Taught me when I'm growing up, right? I'm an only child. I've never been ill. Passed the big 5-0 some time ago. My 2 daughters, 32, 33, never been ill. My grandkids, never been ill. I'm telling you, the legacy lingers on. As I watched my father have this midnight snack, suddenly it occurred to me. I know that's part of it. An apple, what? A day. That's gotten to Dallas-Fort Worth, right? An apple. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. Good question for this intelligent audience. What if that's true? You say, well, Mr. Owen, if that's true, that would be easy to do. Then what's the problem? It's easy not to do. It's easy not to adopt it as your own personal philosophy. Or the guy messed up the saying. Guy says a Hershey bar a day. Say, no. No. You've been watching too much television. It is not Hershey bar. You got to be smarter in philosophy than to fall for the Hershey bar a day when it's an apple a day. You got to be smarter than that. And if you make that kind of an error in judgment every day for 6 years, I'm telling you, it'll accumulate into disaster. Sometimes the first year you say, well, you know, I'm so healthy now, what difference is it going to make? You got to be smarter than that. Just because disaster doesn't fall on us at the end of the first day doesn't mean disaster isn't coming. You got to be so smart that you look down the road and say, will the errors in my present judgment of philosophy, what's that going to cost me in 1 year, 6 years, 1 month, 6 months? I'm telling you, the money cost and the health cost and the success cost is too gigantic if you look down the road a little ways and say, are there errors in my current judgment like an apple versus a Hershey bar? Is that just a good illustration of some of the rest of my errors in judgment? If it is, that's where I found myself at age 25. I started working when I was 19. I met my teacher who helped turn my life around when I was 25. That's 6 years. At the end of the first 6 years of my economic life, I've got pennies in my pocket. I've got nothing in the bank. The creditors are calling saying, hey, you told us the check was in the mail. I'm embarrassed. I'm behind on my promises. I live in America. I'm 25-year-old American male. I got a nice family, every reason to do well. And I'm messed up. Now, what's messed up? I used to think it was the community that was messed up, and the country was messed up, and the government was messed up. If those Democrats ever get in the White House, that'll really mess things up. If the Republicans stay in power, that'll really mess things up. The economy was messed up. Interest rates are messed up. I thought all this stuff was messed up. Then I found out that's not what was messed up. I was criticizing the only thing I had to work with. What was really messed up was my own personal philosophy. My own errors in judgment in my own personal philosophy brought me in 6 years to pennies in my pocket, nothing in the bank, and trying to explain why I wasn't doing well, living in America, 25-year-old American male, got a family, every reason to do well. Now, once I understood this, here's the formula for failure: errors in judgment, being lax about developing your own personal philosophy. I'm telling you, it's called accumulated disaster.
there's something to be gained. See, you got all dressed up not to run, you got dressed up to stand, not to give place or territory, not to evacuate the turf that's yours.
And it's in these moments right now that so often we feel like backing down.
See, endurance isn't a trait we're born with. It's something we cultivate, step by step, day by day. Every time you push a little harder, every time you resist the urge to give up, you're building endurance. It's not about being the strongest or the fastest. It's about the commitment to keep going no matter what. Let me tell you a little secret. The most remarkable people in history, those who've changed the world, weren't necessarily the smartest or the most talented. They were the ones who simply kept going. They endured. No matter how hard it got, they understood that pain and struggle are part of the journey.